Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Wix and I'm back with another little video. This time the story will be demystifying the question, do IT professionals use Linux and how? Because I've seen a lot of hobbyists online that always argue, Linux is used by the IT professionals industry. It's gotta be the best desktop system out there. You guys are missing out. Yeah, I'm here to talk about that today and maybe shed some light on it. Okay, let's see. So as an introduction, the first we need to talk about what an IT professional means, because the IT industry has many sides, so this IT pro can mean many things. I will be covering this from the side of a software engineer, basically software development professional. For big corporations that aren't Google or Facebook or stuff like that, the corporations I'm talking about, they have paying customers, so they sell their services to their customers, and those services that they sell, we develop. Second on the list is this region limited that I put in here, and this is because I can't talk about the rest of the world. I only know how the IT professional, software development professional scene is in Europe, and how OSes are used over here, because I've seen a bunch of corporations and enterprises. But I have no idea how it is in the other parts of the world, so maybe people can tell me in the comments. But I don't know, so I won't speak to that, because I usually don't go with opinions. I only say what I know. As a professional introduction here, I've been a software engineer for like the last 15 years, 15 plus I think, because they gave me a watch when I had 15 years, and it's been like 3 or 4 years since then. So yeah, it's more than 15 years. And I worked with a lot of technologies. I wrote a lot of apps, services, websites, portals, did many things in these years. Now for my job, currently I do development, .NET Core, I do some project management and some DevOps. For those who don't know what DevOps is, it's basically infrastructure to build, deploy, manage your apps in the cloud. App services, database servers, whatever. It's basically that. And I work with a lot of companies, mostly big ones, corporations, enterprises. And the current one that I work for is in the financial sector, so you can imagine there can be no mistakes there, and you can't have poor performance, because their customers then will wait a lot to see the invoices or stuff. You have to have good UI, good UX, basically a normal professional setting. When you're selling a product, everything has to be perfect. So yeah, in the scope of the video, I put this one on here because I don't want to get comments from sysadmins or network engineers or other parts of the IT industry that have nothing to do with software development. That's outside the scope of the video. Maybe they use Linux more, probably they use Linux more, but I'm just talking from the software and development professional point of view. And I'm curious here if there's any cybersecurity professional watching this. I'm curious what their opinion is. Cause I know they use Linux for doing their penetration testing, but what do they use like at home or to do the reports, everyday job stuff? Do they use Windows or Linux? I'd be curious, because from what I've seen, I've looked into it a bit. Even in cybersecurity, Linux is mostly used to do the actual penetration testing, but everything else about the job, like reports that they have to write and their own personal PCs, they're usually Windows and they run Linux in a VM. But yeah, I would be curious to hear from actual cybersecurity professionals in the comments, if there's anybody watching. Alright, so let's get on with the video then. Oh, sorry. I'll start with Mac. So, Mac. I've seen Mac. The end. That's it. It exists. Yeah, I'm just joking. Yeah, Macs are around in the software engineering. Seen most of the use cases I've seen were when devs were trying to port the apps they made on Windows to Mac. So basically the company that was buying the app wanted it on Windows, Mac and iPhones. So there are Macs around for that. And I've seen people working on iPhone apps on Mac OS apps in my company. We have teams for that. They're not the majority, they're the minority, but that's related to my next point on the slide. Not in my scope. That means I don't see companies that want Mac software developed coming to us because we don't advertise for Mac. Most of the Mac work we get to do is the clients asking, hey, can you do Mac too? But they're mostly coming to us for consumer Windows. Desktop apps, not anymore, but web apps and services maybe in the cloud. But even if it's a web app, we mostly do it on Windows. So yeah, that's probably why that's so low in our company. Not in my scope, we're not advertising as Mac developers. For home use, I have seen some Mac people among the software engineers. There's some of them that like Mac and they use it at home. They have no problems with it. Work from home works perfect. So yeah, they exist. They're not the majority again, but they're there. It's not like, that's why I said it's region limited, because that's what I've seen around Europe. And I'm not only talking about my company. I know the enterprises I worked for in the past and currently. I know what they use. And yeah, it's mostly Windows. There are some Macs, but not many. And I'm curious to hear from Mac devs. Yeah, I don't know much about the Mac software development side of this. I would be curious to hear in the comments how they use it, what do they develop on it. Curious of the purposes of the apps. I assume you can do web development just fine like you can on Windows. There's no problem, I don't expect. And the same is true for Linux. It's just the popularity right now, I think. Alright, so yeah, that's Mac. Let's go to little old Linux. The best desktop OS in the world according to hobbyists. Okay, so work-wise, we do use a lot of Linux. I haven't seen anything else than Ubuntu or Ubuntu, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know if it's Ubuntu server, because usually they just choose from Azure or from AWS, give me a Ubuntu latest image. I don't know if it's a server or not. Of course, they don't have UIs, but you can install a headless Ubuntu desktop too. There's no problem. I didn't dig deep enough because I really didn't care. I just wanted a Ubuntu image. And most of the time, this is only used to host Docker images. They're not used as web servers. It's not like get an Ubuntu image and put an Apache on it and host my site. No. It's mostly to run Docker. For sites, if people need sites in the cloud, there's services for that. From Azure, it's called App Service. For AWS, I forget the name of it, but they have one too. And you basically just give them the API and the front end, and they host your site. We don't even deploy anything for that. All right, what else do I have? Some bash scripting, yeah. We use some bash scripting, not much, mostly to just configure the Ubuntu images to be able to host whatever we want to host on them. One example was we need the Microsoft fonts for a report generation server that needed to render some reports with the Microsoft fonts in them. So we use some bash to, it's not even scripting, it's just basically installing some extra packages that we needed. For home use, I haven't heard anyone using Linux at home. I haven't seen it, not in my coworkers, not in the corporations I worked with, not anywhere in the classes or certifications I've went to do. Nobody and uses Linux. Not even Curiosity. That's why I put here no Curiosity, because I installed it at home and I wanted to switch to Linux. I started a long time ago with Linux out of curiosity, and I've been keeping track with it over the years. And I tried to switch to it full time recently. I have a video about how that one went, but I haven't seen any curiosity around me of people just wanting to try Linux. Basically, I mean, the software engineers usually work like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So if they're happy with their Windows or Mac systems, there's no reason for them to try Linux. And we're off to Windows. There's a little history here that I have to disclose, because I think it's part of it, but it's not the full reason. I think because because Windows is so popular, most of the things need to run on Windows. And this comes from the Windows desktop apps that we used to do in the past. Now everybody's moving to web, but nobody changed from Windows, even though you can do web development everywhere, even on Mac or Linux. It should be about the same. There wouldn't probably be no downside. But nobody changed because Windows were still working perfectly for them. So for everything, all the workstations are Windows. There's other reasons, of course. If you put in the domain controller, the Microsoft Active Directory that they use to manage all the logins for the home from work connections over RDP, for the conference room PCs, even for workstations, for emails, it's Azure, Microsoft Active Directory and domain controllers. Of course, you're going to use Windows. And in my company, what we use them for lately, I mean, my company, my team, because the company is big, but now the trend is to go towards microservice architecture, and we use it to make microservices in .NET Core. And these are the ones that we host in Docker on Ubuntu images in Azure. There is some PowerShell involved, mostly for little tools that we need around, for like encrypting some stuff locally, some configuration keys, stuff like that. Some loggings for a private repository for NuGets, stuff like that. So there is some PowerShell involved. It's more than Bash, but yeah. The enterprises we work for, they're almost all Windows. I mean, almost all. I've never seen one not to use Windows. Everything is Windows. Every machine they give us access to remotely log in, they're all Windows. And also usually the enterprises that we work for choose the cloud architecture if they want, not architecture, but hosting provider. If they want AWS, if they want Microsoft Azure, it's not up to us. They come to us and they say, we want to use Azure. Sure, no problem. They're both the same. It's just the price difference, I think, at this point. And I've also seen a lot of clients, a lot of big enterprises and developers from them, and the high rankers, the CEOs and the big boys in their enterprises. They're even using Microsoft Edge. I was surprised to see that one. And as for browsers go, yeah, everybody is mostly using Edge and Chrome. I'm one of the special snowflakes that uses Firefox. But if it's not broken, don't fix it. Firefox does whatever I need. I'm not switching. And at home, everybody uses Windows. I mean, everybody that's not using Mac uses Windows at home. Mostly for VR, gaming, multimedia, game days, personal projects. Even I have some seen some people do some personal projects with artificial intelligence, neural networks, machine learning, stuff like that. Even if they are coding in Python, although Microsoft has some machine learning frameworks, they chose Python, and even then they did not install Linux, and they're not even running VMs for Linux. They're not even running WSL, Windows subsystem from Linux, for Linux. They just installed Python on their Windows machine, and it works perfectly, no reason. So yeah, in a nutshell, software engineers usually use Windows. They only care about what works well, what has more features, where's the less headaches to be had. They rather pay and have it just work than fight the technology and not trust it will work in the future when they needed to add or change something to it. People don't care if it's Windows, Linux or Mac, to be honest. Just need to work. If you ask software engineers why they like a system, it's mostly because it's easy to work with and it works. Not because it looks good, not because it doesn't spy on you, not because it's free. And it also doesn't make sense to complain about privacy when you're using Google, Microsoft, Apple. You can't, I mean, in my point of view, if you use Linux for privacy and you still use Google, Apple and Microsoft or whatever else, what's the point? And usually software engineers go by logic for using a system or another. Now I'm not saying there's no software engineers that use Linux. Of course there are. I assume most of the embedded systems development is done on Linux, or most of the network infrastructure software is probably done on Linux, robotics and so on. Hardware, like more, yeah, that's embedded. What I meant to say was software that works very close with hardware. I assume that's mostly done on Linux. The only thing is that they're not the majority of the software development professional scene. I don't want to say they're the minority because I didn't count them, but as I say it, most of the software development professional scene is not in those sides of software development, not embedded system, not robotics, not networks, not the consumer desktop market mostly runs Windows. Anyway, those are my 2 cents about the subject. Hope I cleared up a bit of the mess I've seen online, where hobbyists are fighting about which system is the best on the desktop. And they sometimes put words in the IT professionals' mouths, or at least not in my mouth, because I'm a software engineer. Probably other areas of IT industry, professional ones, they probably use only Linux, most of the time Linux. I'm just saying it how it is in the software development, the consumer software development, because there's a difference between consumer software and specialized software. And usually IT professionals, from my experience, they don't care about what they use as long as it works. If the piece of software does what they need and it works for the job they're getting paid to do, they don't care what they use. And that's about it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.